will come to order. Our first order of business before we do a roll call, the Honorable Judge January, I apologize, is here to swear in our newest board member, David Gurian.
Good evening. The Board of Education is charged with the governance of the free public education afforded to all the children in the community. This charge comes with tremendous responsibility, as the quality of education provided our children will greatly impact their future, as well as the future of the community, state, and nation. It is no small task that you are accepting tonight. Taking the oath tonight will be your public declaration of fully accepting this charge. And if you would please respond, "I do," after the following phrases. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 15 in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of your ability?
I do.
And further, do you swear that you will respect taxpayers' interest by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets?
I do.
Encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by your fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board while respecting the privacy of students and employees?
I do.
And will you recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting?
I do.
And do you understand that you are to abide by the majority decision of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels?
I do.
Well, congratulations and best wishes for your tenure.
Thank you
on
very
the
much.
board.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge January, and
Thank you.
welcome, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good to see you. That's good. Thank you.
Great
Nice to
seeing
see you
you.
again.
These cold evenings.
Oh, that's okay.
It's very cool.
As our first order of business, may I have a roll call, please?
Babcock?
Here.
Chapman?
Here.
Eckford?
Here.
Gurian?
Here.
Hunt?
Here.
Morrison? Seifert?
Yes, here we go. We have just started this with every meeting. We want to remember our mission and always address that and have that in the back of our minds as we proceed through our Board of Education meeting. And that mission of School District 15 is to produce world-class learners by building a connected learning community. Dr. Thompson.
This evening, we have some of those learners with us that are going to lead us in the pledge. They're from Willow Bend School, and Melissa Sabatino, the principal, will come up and introduce them. Willow Bend used to be called the window to the world schools, wasn't it? And it's got a world globe in the front of the schools.
Yes, it does.
May I use this microphone?
Yes.
It should be on.
Is it on? Oh, thank you. Oh, good. Good evening, Dr. Thompson, President Babcock, distinguished members of the board, district staff, and visitors. It's my privilege as principal to present to you some very special students from Willow Bend School. These children represent the immigrant and visitor population in our student body. They are relative newcomers to the United States, and they have learned the Pledge of Allegiance out of respect for America and the safety and opportunity that our country offers them. The children will be introduced by Mrs. Pitcher, who is herself an immigrant from Poland. She serves these students as their English as a second language teacher. Eva?
Hi, I would like to introduce my students, and I have Weronika Krawczak, Olivia Kawalec, and Irmina Mróz from Poland, and I have Julia Paszko from Ukraine. I have Shreya Bagi, Sawan Pandita, Archit Kumar, and Darshni Kenan from India. I have Karina and Ekaterina Yordanova from Bulgaria. And I have Naya and Isa Shamali from Syria. Welcome.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, kids, come on over here. The Board of Education has a light-up pen for you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for All right, moving into my section, the first item of business in my section is an overview of life safety projects, and I'd like to ask Mr. Adamczyk to come up and lead us through those updates.
Good evening, President Babcock, members of the board, Dr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, I'm going to give an update of where we're at on the life safety projects. This project, as the board recalls, the life safety study was done early in 2015. The report was submitted to, the full report of all the life safety projects was submitted to the Illinois State Board of Education around August. And then through the community forums that Dr. Thompson had conducted, we identified certain A and B items that we wanted to submit for work to be done in the summer of 16 and 17. Those are called life safety amendments. Total of $29,566,080 worth of life safety amendments have been submitted to the Illinois State Board of Education. In fact, I've got, and that includes two amendments which I'm asking the board to approve later tonight on a separate board agenda item. That's all of the A items, and some of the B items that if it made sense to do the B item while we're doing the A item as an efficiency standpoint, because it would save money, that those were the projects that Craig Phillips and Jan Taniguchi of STR Partners identified. Those were submitted. A lot of questions came back and forth as whether they qualified as life safety amendments or not under the school code. Sometimes they actually were denied at first, but then there were other issues that other regulatory agencies said they wouldn't give us occupancy permits come next fall if we didn't comply with the way they were written in the life safety amendments as submitted. So long story short, 'cause there were so many questions, Jan Taniguchi of STR, Craig Phillips, and myself traveled to Springfield in December and met with representatives from the Illinois State Board of Education. The meeting went really, really well. They were very accommodating, answered a lot of questions. I think the meeting went really, really well because we cleared up a lot of confusion. As a result of that, a little over $25 million has been approved. $2,183,000 remains outstanding. Our understanding is the $2.1 million that is outstanding will be approved this week. So by the end of this week, we're hoping that of the 29 million that was submitted, about 27 of that money will be approved, which means that if the board then decides to issue life safety bonds for all of a portion of it, the board can then do that. So about 27 to 29 million will be approved. The other 2 million, we will just pay for that out of our normal capital projects fund budget, which the board allocates $3 million every year for. So we're looking, hopefully by the end of this week, we'll get the final amendment approvals. After that point, the board will then can decide if it wants to issue life safety bonds again for all or a part of it. And then the next step would be, if the board decides to issue bonds for parts of that, we would have to have probably a resolution at next month's board meeting, calling really a resolution to issue life safety bonds. Then there's a public hearing that happens after that, and then selling of bonds if that's what the board so decides. So that whole process would probably take about 60 days. So it's been a long process, but we're almost there as far as getting them all approved.
Questions?
Yes.
Out of that 2.3 million, you said that would be paid for out of our operational maintenance fund, not exceeding the amounts that are already either anticipated or are in the budget over the next 2 years?
Correct. So what we've always done is, in our 5-year forecast, we assume $3 million of capital project
Yeah,
funding.
I just want to clarify, we're
Yeah.
not talking about.
Not additional. It would come out of that $3 million.
And then, out of the 2.3, do you know how much of that is part of this summer versus next summer? It doesn't matter if you don't know
Okay,
that.
Jan may know the answer
No,
to that.
that's
I
okay.
don't know.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
Jan's shaking his head. He said he doesn't know.
Well, thanks, Dan.
And the outstanding, the 2 million that is outstanding, we're still hoping for or waiting for a decision?
We're waiting for a decision, but Jan talked to Illinois State Board of Ed this week, and they said, they basically gave him a verbal commitment that it would be approved.
So thank you, Jan.
I think we owe the group thanks for going down to Springfield
road trip,
and doing
you
work
bet.
on our behalf. That's a pretty significant work to get done for us, so we
Yeah,
appreciate that.
it was
For
great
sure.
work. So June also left at your spots tonight some PowerPoint slides that I asked Mike to share at tonight's meeting. Because of the timeframe, we do feel like it's necessary for us to make a decision fairly quickly about how we're going to fund these life safety projects. And Mike has got some slides that he'd like to walk you through, 3 options basically, and then I'm going to make a recommendation about which one we think is the best course of action for the district.
Yeah, so again, the first slide is just a reiteration of what I talked about. 29.5 has been submitted to the Illinois State Board of Ed. 25 million has been approved. 2.1 remains outstanding, which is about 2.3 million has been disallowed. Now, which are the numbers we've already talked about. It's interesting to note, and just to keep in mind, that as we look at all the life safety projects in the district, the total amount of the A and B items was about $155 million. So even though we're only talking approximately about $30 million tonight, total A and B items are about $155 million. And then there was another about 19 or $20 million of C items, which are recommended items, don't have to be done, but the total report was about $175 million.
The I'm sorry.
yes.
The items that were disallowed, was it that they didn't see them as A and B items? Did they?
When
I'm
they
sorry.
Well, let me clarify.
Please.
They were not fundable. In other words, they have certain rules, some of which I don't think make too much sense. But as an example, if we found a janitor's closet that didn't have an exhaust fan and was accumulating fumes, and we suggested putting in an exhaust fan, they would deny it because there was no exhaust fan there in the first place.
Okay.
So anything new, they considered new, they denied. However, if there was an exhaust fan that was broken, they would have funded that.
Okay.
So they had various
Okay.
examples like that, it just was not fundable.
Okay.
They agreed that it was something important to do and it should be fixed, but something they couldn't. Also, they had maintenance items with certain things like cages over certain lights or broken fixtures, and they said that that was maintenance, and they couldn't assign it, funding.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to get a feel for.
It really was impressive that they went down and got many of these things approved that weren't approved, because I talked to the director of the Superintendent's State Association, and he said that that's a trend statewide, that they're denying a lot of life safety projects. And I have a feeling a lot of school districts are just saying okay and moving on, but we were able to send our group down there, and they did a nice job to get those approved, as Dr. Chapman said.
Thank you.
So as the board and the district considers whether to issue life safety bonds or not, is some of the outstanding items, outside factors that can affect the school district to help your decision-making that we really don't have any control over as a district. Senate Bill 1 is still out there. That was the reallocation of general state aid dollars. It was originally Senate Bill 16, and then it was reintroduced as Senate Bill 1. It hasn't been acted upon, so it's still kind of, it's really in abeyance, I guess, for lack of a better term. Annual revenue loss, I've seen anywhere from between $9.1 to $9.6 million a year, if that were to happen. We don't know what the status is of that. State Superintendent last week recommended his budget for the for education, for next year. And what his recommendation is to take the special ed dollars that are allocated via the MCAT or the mandated categorical and put that into the GSA formula and reallocate the GSA formula. If that happens, and if his recommendation goes through, District 15 is looking at an annual revenue loss of about $1.2 million. So it's not.
Just for the audience and for those, when you're referring to GSA, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's general state aid. So it's the main vehicle by which the State Board of Education funds education in the state of Illinois. And it's based on property tax, wealth, and number of students. And there's 3 different levels of it, but that's the main way that.
And it's not beneficial to District 15? It's generally not beneficial to
Generally not, because we're considered a property tax wealthy district because about 72% of our revenue comes from property taxes. And what's been going on with Senate Bill 1 is the downstate districts claim that they're not getting a fair share of the dollars to educate children. And they don't have the property tax base to seek more taxes to increase their funding. So they've been lobbying for a redistribution of how those dollars have been allocated. And the formula goes back about, I think, close to 30 years, if memory serves. So I look at the state superintendent's recommendation kind of a little bit of Senate Bill 1. It's a reallocation of the dollars. If you look at the list that the State Board of Ed generated, almost all the districts in Cook County and the collar counties, Lake, McHenry, DuPage, et cetera, there's a revenue loss, but the districts that are downstate see an increase in revenue.
Mike, on point 2, you had mentioned some of that cut would come from special ed funding, from a recommendation by the state superintendent?
Yeah, so in District 15, we get about $9.5 million, $9.6 million in GSA money, general state aid, about another $1.5, $1.6 million in special ed funding. Now, of that $1.5, $1.6 million, we spend, irrespective of federal grants for it, special ed, about $4.5 million a year on special ed. So even though we get that grant money for special ed, we're still supplementing that with additional dollars, either through the GSA dollars or property tax revenue. So what the proposal is to take those 2 pots of money, combine them, and then redistribute them.
So in essence, we even lose more than downstate because of our abundance of special ed funding? If it ties into Senate Bill 1 funding and more of that allocation is going to come out of special ed, it really affects us even more.
Well, that special allocation would be gone, is what they would do. So and they haven't run there's only been one. I hope I'm answering it correctly, or answering your question. What they've looked, we saw a spreadsheet the Illinois State Board of Education put out. It showed our annual revenue loss, taking into account what we get for GSA this year and special ed funding this year, what it would look like next year, and the net loss to us when you put all those factors together is an overall loss of about $1.2 million.
So there's a property tax freeze.
There's a property tax freeze, which would be effective for the 2018 and 2019, 18-19 and 19-20 school years for Cook County. It would, as the proposal that was presented a year ago, It goes into effect 1 year sooner for every other county, but for Cook County, it's 2018 and 2018-19 and 2019-20. Our tax levy is about $118 million a year, so if you figure a 2% CPI on our tax levy, which has been the average inflation rate over the last 10 years, that's about $2 million a year revenue loss in 18-19, 19-20. And then it compounds, so if you don't get it in that first year, as the board is well aware, you don't get it every year thereafter, plus the CPI on those numbers. So because there's no budget yet at the state, and there's a lot of unanswered questions out there, but that's something else that could negatively affect District 15 as well. And then the potential pension cost shift, that's been talked about going back probably for about 2 years. And we had the pension reform bill, and then that got rejected. I think that's still on the table out there. Dr. Chapman may have heard a little bit more from Ed Red on that recently, but about 1% would cost the district about another $800,000 in expenditures. Now, we've heard over the past that the phase-in could be anywhere from 1.5 to 2% the first year, and then adding a 0.5% every year till it ultimately reaches 6 or 9%. So if it was 6%, if $800,000 is for 1%, then 6% would be $4.8 million by the time it would be fully implemented or phased in.
So there are a lot of unknowns and a huge potential cut in revenue that we could see if one or all of these were brought into effect. Fortunately, tonight we have Representative Elaine Neckritz here. Maybe in a few minutes she'll share with us what she thinks about some of these things. But because of these potential issues that will reduce our revenues, we're recommending tonight that the board strongly consider issuing life safety bonds. Mike has got a spreadsheet there. Mike, you want to walk him through the spreadsheet of the scenarios?
Yeah, really quickly on the top, the top number shows our ending fund balance, which is from our last 5-year forecast through the 1920 school year, with an ending fund balance of $46.2 million at the end of the 1920 school year, $46,218,664, or about 28.67% of expenditures, which is still a nice, healthy fund balance. And I assume issuing, just for round numbers, $30 million using all district funds, no life safety bonds at all. Then obviously $30 million from $46 million would leave us a fund balance at the end of 1920 of $16.2 million, or 10%. And then another one I did, the third scenario, half district funds, half life safety funds. So that means $15 million would come out of district fund balances. So our $46 million fund balance would be reduced $15 million to $31.2 million, or about 19% of the expenditures.
And that's regardless of, we don't know what's going to happen with the state. So these
Correct.
fund balances that you're talking, it could be much, much worse than that.
That's correct, absolutely, yes.
And Mike, again, the recommendation on fund balances is 30%?
25% to 30%, the Illinois State Board of Education
For a
recommends.
better rating?
To keep our financial profile score. There's about 7 or 8 items that go into that, but fund balance is one.
Point, obviously, the better fund balance we have, the better rating we're going to get, and the lower interest we're going to pay. on
Lower
the
interest on the
Exactly.
bonds.
And we'll do the bonds.
Very true.
And the board then needs to contemplate this, but we will not be really taking any action on this until our February meeting, correct?
That's correct, there's no
Yeah.
action items.
So we wanted to make sure that the board members had enough information, but our strong recommendation is that we issue life safety bonds. Remember, there are many unknowns that are happening in Springfield that could affect our revenue, and we need to have cushion to absorb some of those things as they do occur down in Springfield. The other thing is that, these are just $30 million worth of A and B items. We still have another $100 million that we have to really consider doing going forward. And then there's regular maintenance that's going to be required that's not a part of life safety. So to decimate our fund balances, I think, puts the district in a precarious spot, and I'm not in favor of doing it. And so I recommend that we issue life safety bonds. And so if the board needs more information, then I think we'd have to have a special meeting, because our schedule would require us to pass a resolution in February to get the bond issuance moving forward. And so if the board members feel like they need more information, we'll schedule a special meeting, we'll talk more. If they're comfortable with this, if individual board members want to come and talk to Mike and me, we can walk them through what we think is important. But I want to make sure that you have enough information so that we're able to bring this to the board in February.
I would like to suggest that if the individual board members have questions or concerns, that they get in touch with myself or with the superintendent and Mike, and get their questions asked if we are in disagreement. I personally am not in disagreement with, funding the life safety bonds. But if anyone has any questions or concerns, I think we need to get those answered sooner rather than later, and I want you all to be comfortable with whatever decision you should opt for.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That I know we had a meeting where we discussed the effect of the bonds on an average home, and that was helpful. I kind of want to go back and dig up that
Yeah.
presentation, and maybe if you have it,
Oh, yeah, we can resend it.
sending that around.
That would be helpful if you could resend that. I think it was 2 or 3 pages of the effect on homeowners.
It was, we did that in a board meeting back in August.
Yeah.
We can resend that, yes.
If we could get that one more time, just to refresh.
Do you remember the dollar amount? Was it like?
No, I don't.
Okay, yeah, we'll just resend that to you.
Perfect. And in the meantime, should there be any other questions, then get in touch with our superintendent, and then you can direct it as needed, okay?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
The second item in my section is just an update on my goals for the year. And I have 6 goals. They're really tied to the board's goals as well. But I gave you a summary of the work that's been done thus far and what you can anticipate. Goal 1 is to investigate and bring a report to the board about the cost and space requirements to implement full-day kindergarten. Working on that and plan to bring that to the board in the spring. So we should have a good understanding of what would be involved in having full-day kindergarten for our students in the district. We continue to look at academies to offer unique ways for kids to learn in the district, and the Facilities Plan Committee that's meeting next Wednesday, that will be part of their task to look and see about whether that should be something we offer to kids in the future. And after the committee does its work, I'll be coming back with some recommendations and some considerations for the future. Dr. Schnorr and the Department of Instruction have been doing tremendous work, and we've got our math pilot is underway. We've got I think, a really robust curriculum revision cycle, and we're well on our way to looking at adopting math, science, and reading materials, and so that's been written up for you there. And you can see, I think that we're doing a great job. I think the timing has been just right as far as the adoption of new materials that will help us really be at the cutting edge of the new state standards and making sure that our kids are ready for all the assessments and learning.
Scott, is a lot of that tied into the PD after-school work, personal development?
After school as well as in
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a lot of that is happening during those days. Good question. We're also looking at ways to expand preschool, and you can see that there's been some expansion already, some work done this year, and we're going to continue to do some ongoing work to analyze our facilities, cost factors, and we're going to consult and collaborate with State Board of Education and the people that provide our ECDEC services in the district. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue to expand those, and you can see we've already done some of that this year already, thanks to Sue Gehring's leadership. We've met to look at the potential savings through a busing schedule, going from kind of a 2-tiered schedule to a 3-tiered schedule. Mike, Tom, and members of the task force have been working on that, and we plan to bring that to you in March to show you what potential savings could be, as well as the impacts to family schedules, school schedules, and other things, and so that'll be coming in March. Number 6 is just enhancing student curricular opportunities. We always want to continue to look at ways that we can enhance students' opportunities while they're with us for our 9 years. You can see we've got some really exciting things happening. Our Young Entrepreneurs Academy is up and running, and we've got some kids that are participating in that. We had a great amount of interest, and we're excited about this as being an ongoing opportunity for kids to be entrepreneurs, develop a business plan, come up with an idea, and launch it if possible through the support of the Palatine Chamber of Commerce and then the mentors from the business community that are mentoring these kids. We've got 2 Capital One Coders Clubs going now. We had one successfully completed in the fall, and then we've got 2 more that are going to start up in the near future. But these are very exciting events where we've got kids actually learning how to write code using a Chromebook and in cooperation with the Capital One Foundation that has been sponsoring this. So we're excited about that. We've expanded soccer. We've doubled the amount of participants this year. Last year was 144, this year 288. And we've also expanded our mariachi bands. Band was here recently. That was kind of fun. And we'll have a new one at Carl Sandburg Junior High next year. And then also, if there's enough interest, at our other 2 junior highs, both at Sunling and at Plum Grove, if there's interest. So we're surveying students to see if that would be of an interest to them. So that's my goal update. Any questions?
Now, those are some very exciting programs, though.
That's it for my section.
Thank you. Before we move on to item 6 and reading and acceptance of the minutes, if there's anyone in the audience wishing to address the board, there's a green sheet that is in the entranceway. If you could fill that out and turn that into our secretary, that'll be coming up after a little bit later on in the meeting. Okay, reading and acceptance of the minutes. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the following meetings of the Board of Education. December 9th, 2015 Special Board of Education meeting, December 9th, 2015 regular Board of Education meeting, and the December 21st, 2015 Special Board of Education meeting in its respective executive session as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Eckert?
Aye.
Gray?
Abstain.
Khan?
Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Moving on to item 7, board discussion and reports. For Ed Red this evening, we are very fortunate to have Elaine Neckrits with us this evening, Representative Elaine Neckrits, and she is going to be doing our update today.
Thank you for volunteering.
Thank you so much. Dr. Chapman thanks you.
Yeah, be nice to me.
Well, you're a friend, so you're
Okay.
in good company.
All right, sounds good, sounds good. I have to say, the pledge was so heartwarming, and I feel like, I was thinking while the children were doing the pledge, that if we had something like that in the Illinois General Assembly, maybe we'd all start the day off better, and it would end better, too. But we'll see what we can do about that. And I'd like to welcome you, Mr. Graham, to the board. It's always fun to see someone sworn in. So it's clear that we don't have a state budget, although K through 12 education does have a budget that the General Assembly passed and the governor signed. So that is the good news for all of you. I wanted to just give you a couple of notes of caution of things to keep in mind. One is that the State Board of Education itself, or its administration, does not have a budget. So there are lots of things that are funded through the state board that are small but still important for the operation of districts that are not being funded. And I will, one example of that is the intermediate service centers. These are the regional, there's 3 of them in Cook County, in suburban Cook County, one in the north, one in the west, and one in the south. They do teacher licensing, school bus driver training, life safety inspections, and a whole host of other duties. They're still doing all that, but they are really struggling, and those folks in suburban Cook County don't get the same level of funding that all the other counties do to start with. But now because their funding flows through the State Board of Education, they are dramatically underfunded. And I know that in the north, we're looking at laying off a significant portion of their staff and closing down some of their programs starting the beginning of this year. So it is having its impact already. So again, that's just one of the examples of how the failure of funding the operations of the State Board of Education will have an impact locally. I think the second thing that we'll look out for is, even though there is a budget and spending authority for K through 12 education, the state is actually spending money much more, despite the fact that we don't have a budget, we're spending money much more quickly than we are taking it in. And that is due to several things. One is the increase in K through 12 education that was adopted. The second is that there are a number of consent decrees, federal court cases that the state is subject to, and the federal courts have said to us, yes, state of Illinois, you are going to continue to provide that service, and you're going to continue to pay for it at a certain rate, and that is not negotiated with us and doesn't necessarily fit within the revenues we're taking in. So the courts are telling us what to do there. The third is the state court. There's been a couple of lawsuits at the state court level that have also resulted in judgments with which the state is complying. One of those being that we're obligated to pay state employees even though there is no budget. And no, to my mind, no authority to do that. I don't know how the courts got to that decision under the Illinois Constitution, but they did. So we're continuing to pay state employees, again, which is part of the reason that the State Board of Education is operating at all right now, is because at least employees are being paid and they're doing their work and showing up at the office. And then there are I've got the budget that was signed, the consent decrees, the state court decisions, and then last is there are things that don't require annual legal authorization for the state to spend. The big one of those is the pension payment and bond payments. So those are continuing to go out the door as well. So all totaled with all of that, we're probably spending at a rate $4 to $5 billion more than we're taking in, which will mean that bills will get paid, but it'll get slower and slower and slower for you to receive your appropriations. Now, a lot of that is up to the controller to decide what bills she wants to pay and what bills she wants to delay. For all I know, she may prioritize education and get that money out to you on time. I don't know that. I don't know how to predict that right now. Some of that I think will just depend on how backlogged we get with the bills. So let me speak to some of the other spending pressures or revenue pressures that were talked about tonight. One of those is Senate Bill 1, which is a redo of how the state allocates its education dollars. That did go through the Senate last year and really hit a roadblock in the House. And I think it was not just the downstate districts looking for it, but I think the city of Chicago had some, may have had some issues with it. And there was a very, I don't know if you remember, but there was a very significant outcry in the suburbs about the significant losses that a lot of our districts would take. And so it did not move ahead in the House. And I frankly think that as long as we are in a situation where we're deficit spending and we would be robbing Peter to pay Paul under that kind of legislation, I don't see that moving ahead. I don't think there's the support in the House for it under that scenario. Now, if we ever get our fiscal ship righted and we are able to fund things at a normal level, I could see a situation where we might take new dollars and subject that to a new formula, but I don't, and that's what other states that have done this kind of education funding reform, that's how they've approached it. They haven't taken from one district to give to another, because that's just not, you don't get yes votes in the legislature by taking things away from people. So, that's my crystal ball on the education funding reform. The cost shift, which is essentially a method for having school districts pick up the forward-going cost for teachers' pensions and administrators' pensions, that's another one that I don't really see moving ahead. When it was originally proposed, it was in the situation where we were anticipating that there would be some very significant savings from pension reform in the billions of dollars. So that would have meant that we would have more money to flow to send to school districts, and we were also going to be bringing down the cost of the teacher's pension. And neither of those things are happening right now, so I just don't, again, I don't see the cost shift moving ahead right now. The one that I could see is the property tax freeze, and I think in part because the governor has certainly made that a significant priority, and I think that there's at some point, hopefully, God willing, there will be some kind of negotiated deal on the budget, and I could see that end up being one of the items there. It's been certainly something included in items that the Senate has put forth, and the House has taken a number of votes on it. And I have not been on the, I've been voting against them. I've not been on the prevailing side of that, but so far we have not had any kind of agreement on that. And so, but I could see maybe, and I don't think it would be more than 2 years. I think that's kind of sort of permeated the consciousness of the legislature, and that might be a way but I could see that happen. So I'm happy to answer any questions, now that I've thoroughly depressed all of you, and everyone I talk to, I thoroughly depress these days.
Well, Representative, I just had, I mean, you had mentioned that you see a possibility that new monies could be subject to a reallocation. I guess just to explain what that means, you're talking about new.
I think if we are in a situation where we're allocating significant new revenue, if there's new revenue coming into the state, and we experience natural revenue growth of, I mean, generally of somewhere between 2% and 3% a year. And so when in more normal fiscal times, we would fight over how we're allocating that. And education would probably get, I'm guessing, somewhere between 30 to 40% of that based on how we allocate dollars now. And so, we could say, all right, well, those new dollars are going to flow to the districts under a new formula.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you say you don't foresee Senate Bill 1 and the pension reform changing in the short term?
In the short term.
Long term?
In the short term. And I would say that's probably, even by the time if we were to resolve all this tomorrow, it's going to take us a couple years to dig out. And so I would say we're probably looking at my definition of short term would be 3, 4, 5 years.
And one more than the other. I'm assuming Senate Bill 1 will probably not go forward as quick for political reasons. You got to believe, as you had mentioned about getting votes, it's going to be tough to reallocate our money and move down south.
I think, if we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, I just don't see that happening.
Okay.
Again, so I think we'd have to be in a situation where you've got new revenue growth, and that
Anything
would be
above,
out.
okay.
That I would see could be
Okay.
allocated differently.
I have a question. Some years ago, maybe a couple of decades ago, when the state was in this, the state decided that the State Board of Education did not have enough money allocated to fund through the year, which is a similar situation. So they basically told school districts, well, we're going to take your last payment of the year and make it the first payment of next year, and basically we lost 1/12. There's some speculation that might occur again this year. What's your insight on that? Do you think that's a possibility?
I wouldn't discount anything happening, but I've not heard any discussion around that, and I think some of that will depend on, again, how much the governor and the controller want to prioritize education spending over other things. And he seems very committed to that.
Well, it's a big chunk of change.
It's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
$4 billion? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a big hole to fill.
right. It is.
Any end in sight? Any
So,
progress?
I don't think so. My crystal ball, which is about worth what you're paying for it, is that I don't see there actually being a budget resolution. I think we will continue to piecemeal in the way that we have over the last 6 months, so that we have a crisis that we need road salt. We have to have the legal authority to buy road salt, and there's an agreement cobbled around that. So to my mind, the next big failure could be one of the community colleges, one or more of the community colleges, because we're not funding higher education at all. And so I could see that some of the community colleges might say, I can't continue to offer classes. And again, we can't have that happen, so let's cobble together another deal and work around that. And that's how I see this unfolding.
But as far as
Both
this
sides
whole-
are so entrenched, I just don't see it changing right now.
And it's indefinite, so it can go on
Right.
indefinitely.
Yeah.
There's no deadline or?
No, there's no deadline. We've already blown through all those deadlines.
Well, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for all the good news you've
Yes.
I'll be happy to come back anytime and give you all kinds of good news.
No.
All right, well, thank you all for your good work and for this, and on behalf of the students here, so, thank you.
And thanks for your efforts on behalf of the
Yes.
school children.
We do
Thanks for coming
appreciate it.
tonight.
Sure.
Thank you, excellent. Okay. tell me something good for District 15 Education Foundation.
Well, we had our volleyball tournament back in December. We had 18 teams that participated in the tournament. Winston campus was the big winner. Seems like the junior highs always come out on top. Winston was the big winner, and they defeated Carl Sandburg to win the whole tournament. In the exhibition division, Jane Adams took first place over Hunting Ridge, and additionally, we gave out a $100 Spirit Award to John Conyers. So, well-attended, well-run. It was a great tournament. I think everyone had fun. Everyone looks forward to it every year, so look forward again next year.
I learned that our staff is very competitive.
Oh,
Are they?
the junior high folks really get into it. So it's a lot of fun watching them.
Not quite as dangerous as the basketball, huh? Or as aggressive as the basketball?
Basketball was more like football.
Yeah, that's true, true. New business, old business, or other?
I've got two questions. As far as you mentioned basketball, Scott, you and I think the whole board received an email today. I don't know if it's the time to bring it up now about the basketball tournament and timing.
Yeah, Meg's department handles that, and Dr. Schnorr's been on top of that. We tried to come up with a solution. We tried to find an alternative date, and it was just, there were too many conflicts. And if, we had 8 kids out of maybe 50 that were participating, we changed the date, then you get another 10 or 15 kids that you conflict. And so we've contacted both high schools, and we want these significant dates early enough so that we don't have these conflicts in the future. And we're really apologetic about it, but I think the principal at Sunling, where the 8 kids are really affected, has contacted Peloton High School, asked for the presentation, asked for a separate tour, and so we're going to try to make it a good experience for them. Maybe it's even better than if they'd gone to the regular one.
I just think we need to be cognizant as we go forward.
Absolutely. We don't want kids to have to
I was there today, and you can imagine some of the gripes we heard. So, and then one other one concerns busing for extracurricular activities. There was a question brought up about busing on a Friday afternoon, a tournament that went on, again, it relates back to basketball. The kids played in a tournament in Elk Grove and didn't have a bus available. I think it was last Friday or 2 Fridays ago. And I didn't know what the policy was. I was just curious, is the transportation afforded to the kids during school hours? It was a Friday at 4, so a couple parents asked me about the transportation.
The only thing that would affect that is if they want the bus during regular schedule to move home.
Okay. I think it was like a 4 o'clock pickup, and they would have been there probably till 6:30 or 7. And a couple of parents, the concern was if there wasn't a bus and parents were working, how would the kids attend the event?
Well, we provide transportation for those things unless the coaches don't request it. So we'll look into that specific situation and get back to you.
Great, I appreciate it. And then the basketball tournament went on today. It was a great tournament. It was great to see all the junior highs there today. 7th grade, Plum Grove had already won, so congratulations to them. And the 8th grade tournament should be done just about now. So waiting to see a winner.
Great extracurricular program.
Winston came in second.
Thank you. Moving on to citizens address the board. Do we have any citizens that are interested in addressing the school board? Then we will move on to action items. Item 16, 120, the personnel report. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the January 13th, 2016 personnel report as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Eckford?
Aye.
Guryan?
Aye.
Hahn?
Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16, 121, semi-annual review of closed session minutes. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the administration's recommendation for the release of closed session minutes as presented. Following closed session minutes will be approved for release January 14, 2015 special meeting, April 29, 2015 special meeting, May 26, 2015 special meeting, and June 3, 2015 special meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Hahn?
Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Eckford?
Aye.
Guryan?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16, 122, resolution to prepare a budget and establish a fiscal year. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the resolution to establish the fiscal year and authorization to prepare a tentative budget as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Seifert,
Aye.
Babcock,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Eckberg,
Aye.
Gurian,
Aye.
Con.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16123, the resolution for the life safety amendments. This would be for the Walter Sunling Junior High and Jade Addams Elementary Schools. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve resolution authorizing life safety amendments, Walter R. Sunling Junior High and Jane Addams Elementary Schools as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Seifert,
Aye.
Babcock,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Eckberg,
Aye.
Gurian,
Aye.
Con.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16124, bid award for school buses. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to award the contract for the school buses bid 16-004 to Midwest Transit, Kankakee, Illinois, for a total bid award amount of $744,639 as presented. The purchase is to include 4 new 35-passenger diesel school buses, 1 new wheelchair school bus, and 6 35-passenger one-year-old buses. The recommendation is based on bid meeting all bid specifications.
There's a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Are all these diesels?
They're all diesel, yeah.
I just
We
noticed
have,
We mentioned it in the case of the first purchase, not the other two, minor point.
they are all diesels. We are looking at, somewhere in the future, maybe looking at natural gas to see if they're more efficient, but we haven't made that change yet.
Is diesel better than regular fuel? I mean, especially with the winter like we're having now, does the diesel fuel still gel up?
No, we make sure that the additives of
The mixture is-
diesel in the tank before they go into the vehicle, so we don't have to gel.
Great.
And then it looks like there was one bid on this one. Usually there's more, but maybe
So,
we didn't get it.
So we like to have spare parts in the warehouse, and the way we do that is we try to have very few different models available for our buses. So we specified a specific kind of bus so that we've got the parts for it in case they break down. So we've got a stock of parts for, what kind are we buying, Tom?
We're buying international
Yeah.
IC at the moment.
International Harvester buses, and so we're trying to keep a uniform set of buses that have a uniform set of parts so that it simplifies our parts warehouse, our repair service, and it also allows our mechanics to work more efficiently because they're working on different kinds of buses. And so Central States, they could have, but I think that they knew that they weren't going to be able to beat the bid by Midwest Transit, so they didn't do it. There are not many out there that provide these buses, and so Midwest, though, they provide us a good price, and Tom did a nice job, Tom and Mike. You can see we got 6 one-year-old buses with a small amount of mileage on them, but it's a 25% savings over a brand-new bus. So it's a really economical way to buy updated buses, but to get it at a reasonable cost. So the bid was for 10 new buses. If there were no used buses available, we found 6 good used buses, just a year old with minimum mileage, and so it saves the district a lot of money. So congratulations, thank you.
That's great. That's like the same rationale when I buy a car, same thing. Getting a one-year-old, you know?
Oh, huge depreciation.
Roll call, please.
Babcock,
Aye.
Chapman,
Aye.
Eckberg,
Aye.
Gurian,
Aye.
Con.
Aye.
Seifert.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16125, resolution approving an application to ISB for qualified school construction bond designation. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We'll get the suggested motion, please.
I make a motion to approve the resolution approving an application to the Illinois School Boards Association for Qualified School Construction Bond Designation for obligations to finance certain capital projects in and for the district, and authorizing the board president to execute and directing the school district official to submit to ISB said application as presented.
Second.
Discussion.
So these are funds that are set aside. I think they've been set aside for a few years now, since 2009 maybe even.
It's part of the ARPA Act back in 2009.
So the stimulus the stimulus package that came out provided money to build these things. For some reason, it was never made available. Now it's been made available to suburban school districts, $500 million, and these bonds are basically interest-free. So we've applied for those. In the event that the board approves issuing life safety bonds, we could potentially be able to issue all these life safety bonds interest-free to the school district.
When would we know that?
The application deadline is Friday. They'll start looking at those. I don't know when they'll, Mike, do you have any idea when they would return the awards?
They said that they were looking at a quick turnaround, like a month, so we're hoping that by the
So we might know by our next meeting. Okay.
Great. Any other discussion?
I appreciate Mike and Jan being on top of this and sending in the applications and getting us in a position where we potentially could have some savings.
0% interest.
Absolutely. Roll call, please.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Eckert?
Aye.
Gurian?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16-126, resolution reimbursement for life safety fees paid prior to issuance of bonds. May I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the resolution expressing official intent regarding certain capital expenditures to be reimbursed from proceeds of an obligation to be issued by Community Consolidated School District Number 15, Cook County, Illinois, as presented.
There's a second. Discussion?
Basically, this is just allows us, if the board does issue life safety bonds, it allows us to go back 60 days from the issuance of the bonds to recapture costs that were spent before the bonds were issued. Mike informed me today that all architectural and engineering fees, we can go back a long ways for those, but if we actually start doing some construction work before the bonds are issued, this resolution allows us to capture those monies and pay them out of the bond proceeds.
Roll call. Chapman?
Aye.
Eckert?
Aye.
Gurian?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Babcock?
Aye. Motion carries. Item 16-127, approval of the 2016 District 15 Network Refresh. May I have a suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the usage of CDWG to provide Community Consolidated School District 15 Cisco switches and services for the refresh of the district's wired network. Net cost to District 15 approximately $700,000 to commence spring 2016. This item was noted in the 5-year technology plan provided to the Board of Education.
Second.
Discussion?
Again, I want to thank Corey for his work on the E-rate. E-rate is the monies that are available from the federal government that provide for technology services, and they used to be just for telephones, basically. Now they're for a lot of different things, but Corey's done a nice job working with the E-rate people, and half of the approximately half of the $1.5 million is going to be funded by E-rate. This was work that had to be done as part of the 5-year plan for technology, and it's a nice way that it's going to save the school district, $800,000.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Eckert?
Aye.
Gurian?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to motion carries. Moving on to item 16-130, the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent calendar? There being none, may I have the suggested motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Roll call?
Khan?
Aye.
Seifert?
Aye.
Babcock?
Aye.
Chapman?
Aye.
Eckert?
Aye.
Gurian?
Aye.
Motion carries. Correspondence?
Yeah, we had 3 requests and/or responses for information of the Freedom of Information Act during the period of December 4th, 2015 through January 8th, 2016. On December 7th, 2015, a request was received from North American Procurement Council, Grand Junction, Colorado. The response to this request was sent on December 14th, 2015. On December 22nd, a request was received from Andrew Hirth, Elk Grove Village. The response to this request was sent on December 29th. And on December 29th, the request was received from Patty Burke, Champaign, Illinois. The response to this request was sent on January 5th.
Before we take a motion for adjournment, I would, number one, like to say again, welcome, Mr. Gurion.
Thank you.
Congratulations, and Happy New Year to everybody. And, just an observation this evening as we went through some of these reports, the hard work that's been done to save funds for us and save money for us is greatly appreciated and certainly does not go unnoticed, so thank you all.
Absolutely.
With that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.